Good afternoon. Welcome to Books at the Bottom of the Stairs. My name's Lorene. I have an actually stunning, beautiful day to do this outside in the backyard. And I'm not going to show you the changes too much, but down there you can see there's a gravel path, and that's where we're waiting for the stones to come in. We've chosen flagstones that were local to Nova Scotia because they're always available, and they're not available, so it's been 6 weeks we're waiting. Anyhow, very excited about that, but I'm going to talk to you about the things that I have been reading in the month of August. And I think a little bit might have happened in July, but anyways, doesn't matter. The first one that I decided to start my summer off with is Tony Hillerman's Skinwalkers. And this is a series that I have been reading for, well, I read it way back 25 years ago, something like that, and I really enjoyed it and decided that I wanted to reread it. So these are all a reread for me, and they're just as interesting because it's taking place in Nevada and Arizona, down around where there's just a lot of things I don't know anything around in terms of culture, environment. And so we have got the officer Jim Chi, who is a Navajo tribal policeman, and he is shot at. And so, why is he being shot at? At the same time, there are a lot of murders that are happening on the reservation, and so his boss, I guess he would be chief of police, Leaphorn, and they are trying to figure out, are things witchcraft? Are things, real, I guess? And again, I have such short time to pay attention to the technical side of things. I'm going to hold up the cover so that you've got time to capture the information. Chi is someone who is learning how to be a shaman in his own native First Nations traditions, and Leaphorn doesn't believe in witchcraft. So it's quite an interesting subtext that's going on to solving of these mysteries. I really enjoyed this series. Okay, The Labors of Hercules Beale is by Gary Schmidt, and it is a middle grade. I really, really enjoyed this. There were so many fun things. The teacher has challenged Hercules to do the same labors that Hercules has to do in the myths. And the whole class is doing something around myths. It's a whole year, and so each student's been given an individual task to do in relationship to a myth that probably has some resonance for them. And so Hercules has to figure out how to, for instance, do something with 7 lions, or how is he going to figure out what to do with the maze. And the challenge, of course, is that you find it within your everyday life, and it's just so well done. And there's a section in here where a storm comes in. It's taking place on the coast of Maine, I think, and a storm comes in, and it is exactly like my worst nightmare of a storm. Like, I always imagine being in a cottage right on the water, and the waves just coming up and kind of hitting right underneath the windows. And is the house gonna go into the water? Is it gonna get pummeled? It's like, oh my God, it's just such a freaky idea. It's in here. It's like my nightmare's in here. Okay, I'm going to talk about that one later. I just finished Terry Pratchett, The Weird Sisters. I think this is number 6 in the overall Discworld series, and it is the first of the Granny Weatherwax witch and her friend Nanny, Og, and Merritt, and Granny what's her name? Weatherwax is the eldest. Nanny Og has a family and many of children, and she's not quite as focused as Weatherwax would like. And Margit is the newest witch and is into all the newfangled things like jewelry and black nail polish. They have a dilemma that they have been given a baby who comes with a crown, and what are they going to do with this baby who's obviously being scooched away from the kingdom so it's not murdered, and the real king has been murdered, and so there's there's a coup, and so the witches aren't supposed to get involved, but Yeah, are they not getting involved? Are they really keeping the arm's length that they're supposed to? It's so funny. I laughed over and over again in this book, and there were so many different characters that Terry Pratchett has just used to poke fun at. And this is a sort of nod in the direction of Macbeth. Um, I mean, if you know Macbeth, the play, very well, you probably would capture it more accurately than I did. But I, I know the play Macbeth, but not enough to be able to say, this does that and that does this. So I just enjoyed the Macbeth under um, under spirit, as it was, as it were. Okay, this one I don't think too many of you will have bumped into. Dorothy Whipple is the author, and They Knew Mr. Knight is the title of the book. There you go. So she's an old-time writer. This story takes place after World War II, and Thomas Blake is someone who was an engineer, and their parent had an engineering firm and lost it. And so Thomas Blake is trying to, he's been allowed to continue to work there, but his dream is to get it back. And that he bumps into Mr. Knight on the train, and Mr. Knight starts to facilitate things. Thomas is rather naive as to just what Mr. Knight's real goals are. He's not too alert to the what is that? Mr. Knight doesn't really see humans as people. He sees them as tools. And so where does Thomas fit on this? Thomas thinks he's in one place, Mr. Knight has another idea, and then Mrs. Blake, Thomas's wife, has a little more cute observations as to what the family's going through, which is not a bad place to be. Then sort of a rising of fortunes, and then I can't tell you anymore because there are daughters' lives involved, a son's life involved, Mr. Knight's wife. Everybody's kind of, there's the family members of Thomas's Blake who are quite poor. So everybody's got their ups and downs, and Mr. Knight just kind of lazily walks through, and everybody's buzzing around him. So he's a little bit like a king and all his courtiers, and so it's very, very interesting story. It's a bit slow in the beginning, but if you like, I was going to compare it a little bit to, I think it's Barbara Pilcher. Some of you really like her, and I think it's got a similar kind of environment, family structures, family dilemmas, and sort of the evil isn't too evil, the good isn't too good. So I wouldn't call it a cozy story, because I think to me, cozy story also means a bit shorter. So it's too long to be cozy. But it's about 400-ish pages. I did enjoy it. At first I was thinking, I'll have to read this with other books in between so that I don't get overwhelmed. But once I was reading it, I was hooked. All right, this is book number 2 in this series. This is the Jonathan Stroud book. Lockwood & Co. is the series, and the particular title of the book is The Whispering Skull. Sorry. Okay. We've got a whispering skull, and this guy is attached to a particularly nefarious cult that was trying to create a mirror or a window into the supernatural. And so Lockwood and Lucy and George are commissioned by Inspector Barnes to try and help with a particular mystery that seems to be connected to this mirror. The mirror, if you look in it, it kills people. This threesome of problem solvers with the occult continually bumble along in the most hilarious way. They get distracted, each in their own direction, and come together, and I don't laugh, but I enjoy myself. There's real adventures, there's real what would you say? They're not pratfalls. It's not slapstick. It's more like something crazy, like they need to have a tool in their duffel bag, and everybody else thought that the other person had packed it in the duffel bag, so the tool's not there. How are they going to solve it? So they're always just flying a little bit by the seat of the pants, and there's always just a little bit of information that's not there, so that they are also scrabbling quite often. And there is another group of occult slayers, I guess, who are in competition, and so there's that extra challenge as to who's going to actually solve the case first. And I really enjoyed it. I just like a really good adventure. There's not a ton of emotional sidetracks, I guess. I mean, there are, because, you know, it wouldn't be a good book if there weren't some kind of friendship tension that wasn't going on. So they've got their friendship tension, and sometimes it's resolved and sometimes it's not. And this, in this book, it's a little bit of question is it that person's fault, or is something else going on? So I'm going to go ahead for book number 3 in September. The last book I read is fairly new release, Canadian. Okay, is that in focus? Yeah. Moon of the Turning Leaves by Wobeshig Rice. This is book 2, 10 years after, what was it? Moon of the Crusted Snow. And it's tense. The community have left the reservation and they've gone onto the land, and they realized that the food sources around them, they're going to have to do some traveling, a fair amount of distance, in order to get to a good news source. So they decided if they have to pack up and go, they'd like to go back to the ancestral lands. So they've decided to send a group of about 6 people down to Lake Huron, the top of Lake Huron. So I was getting a little confused about the geography, and so went on the map, and Lake Huron doesn't really have a north shore. It sort of has Manitoulin Island, that is kind of its north shore, and then Lake Superior kicks in, and Georgian Bay is in between all of that. So the north shore would maybe be the northern channel. So this original reservation is far off the Highway 17 in Ontario. So they've got to get all the way from there down to what's effectively Manitoulin Island. And how are they going to do that with the rest of the world? They don't know what's happened to the rest of the world. They've been shut off for 10 years and have been able to make do. So they go through a town called Gibson, which I think, if it's the Gibson that actually exists, then I really don't understand the geography, but that's the town's name. And they discover just what has happened to all these hundreds of thousands of people after the lights went out, more or less. Now, it's nothing like Station 11, nothing like Station 11, which had a similar thing in terms of the crises of the book. But so these people eventually get to where they want to go and discover what they want to do, which is resettle in the northern shores of Georgian Bay and so forth, whether that's plausible or not. And it's a hair-raising trip all the way through. There are bears, there's accidents, there's violence, but it's not gory. There's sadness, there's a lot of celebrating of the spirit life and the way First Nations people connect to the world around them and their community. And so it's just really a lovely depiction of community as well, in this group of 6 that are traveling, in the reservation that they are leaving, and the people that they encounter along the way. So I really liked this. The first 2 chapters, I find Wobeshig Rice, he's got an interesting writing style that I don't love, and it takes me two chapters to just kind of get into the flow of things. He's got a tendency to pack his sentences with I think there are too many nouns and adjectives in the same sentence sometimes, and although it draws a very nice picture, I think I would rather see more sentences doing, I'd rather see a single sentence do one description and then move to the next sentence with its description instead of having it all kind of a package. And so it's just a little stylistic thing that I'm not very articulate on. Everything else I loved about this book. I really, really enjoyed it. I suspect it's going to do well across Canada. It's just such a good book. And yeah, I highly recommend it. Now, I have been told by Steve, he listened to the first one, Moon of the Crusted Snow, with audio. And I want to say Billy is the first name of the person who did it, but I'm not going to. You didn't hear me say Billy. So the audiobook is supposed to be really good, and I believe he found it on Hoopla. So Steve is, for those of you who don't know, that's an online library resource. That's, if you've got a library card, you can tap into that and you can get audiobooks, ebooks, and I think sometimes movies, sometimes music. Anyhow, he's going to wait for this to come out on audio, and he tells me that I listen to it also on audio, but like, no memory of that. Okay, the last book, I might have said that the book before, Strange the Dreamer, by Laini Taylor, sorry. No, has that got glare on it? Sorry, gang. Okay. I sort of briefly talked about it in the previous video. Lots of plots, lots of characters, really enjoyed it. It's sci-fi. If you start to talk about a plot, you are going to just get so snarled up because there are so many plots, so many crises. Like, you know, it's a very active book, and it was published in 2017, so the rest of the series should be available, and I'm going to go get that as well for September. It's basically about a missing city that has been rediscovered, and the missing city has a real dilemma that they need help solving. And so the visitors that have come, Laszlo Strange, the name of the character in the title, it becomes pivotal in figuring out what to do about solving this dilemma. And if I say anything more, it's just going to give it away. So, that's it for me. I hope all your reading dreams and adventures continue to come true, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye for now.